In July last year, BC made some major recommended changes to the Family Relations Act. Some familiar words will change and some laws and obligations will change. Georgialee Lang is an attorney and arbitrator who specializes in family law. She has a law blog called Law Diva. She's an adjunct law professor at UBC, and it is my pleasure to welcome Georgialee Lang back to Studio 4 to tell us more. Nice to see you.
Good to be here, Fanny.
So take me back. The BC Family Relations Act, 30 years ago, rejigged a bit.
That's right, rejigged quite a bit actually. What they're proposing is that common law spouses have never been covered under the property portions of the Family Relations Act. So if you were living common law, like many people do, when the marriage broke down, you had to look to other remedies to try to get a share of the property.
I didn't know.
Yes.
Well.
And these other remedies were most unsatisfactory because they gave typically women very little. Mm-hmm. And so when you were finished a common law relationship, you were in a very tight situation. What the government is proposing is that common law spouses come under the umbrella of the Family Relations Act and get treated just like legally married spouses.
That hasn't happened yet, it has?
It hasn't happened yet. I believe it will happen, and I think even more so because last week the Supreme Court of Canada
I saw that.
Brought down a decision that expanded that law that I told you about that gave common law spouses very little. The Supreme Court of Canada opened that up, widened it, and I believe that's going to nudge the provincial governments, probably right across Canada, to sort of get with the program, because the reality is that people don't all get married. They live in other kinds of relationships, their family relationships, their marital-like, and that includes same-sex relationships.
Exactly.
Yes.
And we're a long way from the breadwinning dad and the stay-at-home mom, as you know.
Absolutely. It's all changed.
So long time coming. Nothing is firmly in place yet, but it looks like most of the recommendations will happen.
I think so.
Give or take.
I think this one will for sure.
Okay. Now, as they redefine the legal definition of a parent, that's one thing.
Yes.
What about words that you're used to saying?
Yes. Well,
custody, access, things
right.
like that.
They want to change those words. They've always been considered very pejorative. You know, fathers don't like it when mothers, you know, sort of parade the fact they have sole custody. It's like they own the child.
Right.
So they're changing that. Custody will be abandoned, and the new word will be guardianship. And guardianship has a whole number of criteria. Who decides where a child lives, who makes medical decisions, who decides if a child is going to move to another permanent residence, and they can share those issues, those indicia of guardianship.
So it will now be joint guardianship.
That's right. And that, of course, is the trend. Parents are co-parenting more and more. And in fact, that, in my estimation, is the norm today, that people have joint custody or joint guardianship.
So if you co-parent and your spouse wants to move to Quebec, or your spouse wants to move 20 Ks from where you live, how do you make that happen today, or who's in control today? Typically,
when in a joint guardianship, now a joint custody situation, the parties, the parents, have to confer and agree. And that's the type of case, Fanny, that usually goes to court, because neither one of them has veto power, and obviously, winner takes all. The child moves or the child doesn't move.
Right.
And that really leads into the other big phenomena, I believe, in Canada right now, which is that everybody is finally recognizing that court is the worst place for people to be. And we've said this over the years, and governments have recognized it, but I think with the lack of judges, the delays in the system, the enormous cost, court is no longer a place that can even handle family law cases.
Exactly. If we could all have a friendly divorce, we wouldn't have to go to court or, you know, get to a mediator.
Right.
Get to an arbitrator. What's the difference between mediation and arbitration?
Okay. Well, the new recommendations want to put in place regulations for family law arbitration. Mediation is where the couple go and there's a facilitator who helps them agree but doesn't make the decision for them.
Okay.
Arbitration is quite different. Arbitration is a person who has expertise, who's qualified in family law, who's available on short notice. There's no delays. It's private, so if you're one of these individuals that doesn't want your case all over the internet,
right.
And so an arbitrator makes a binding decision. And like a court case, it can be appealed, but it's a way to circumvent the court system to get the job done quickly. Fanny, today a couple, it can take 3, 4, 5 years to get a case resolved,
right.
Which is just an emotional turmoil, you know, and of course a financial disaster.
Sure. Could a retired judge, a BC judge, be an arbitrator?
Absolutely. In fact, they're ideal, and there are judges right across Canada who do arbitration. But arbitration is new in family law. It's been around in commercial law and contracts and leases and real estate. But this is new, particularly for British Columbia. Ontario has been doing family law arbitration for quite a while now.
It makes sense because it stays out of the courts and it doesn't clog the courts. Now, other things that will happen in Family Relations Act if it's changed, child custody rates, or not custody. Sorry, never mind. Child support rates. Right.
Well, we have the child support guidelines. We've had those for quite a while now, and they're in place. I think the new issue is the spousal support guidelines. And now you go to a chart and you do an analysis and a calculation, and that is a chart that gives you, if you earn this much money, this is what you should be paying in spousal support. And
male or female, I'm assuming.
That's right, male or female. And that has really radically changed the law as well, because the amounts are much higher, and it's very complicated. The rules are complicated. So that's causing litigation.
Sure.
And of course, the guidelines, the spousal support guidelines, were put in place to avoid litigation. But of course, every time you make a new law, there has to be an examination of what does this really mean, what are the parameters of it.
And as you know so well, practicing family law, that the person who makes the most money goes on to continue to make the most money usually, and the person who doesn't make so much money goes on to wonder how they're going to support themselves.
That's correct. Well, and this law, the spousal support guidelines, it says that if you're a businessman and you have a very successful business, we're not only going to look at your personal income, but if you leave money in your business, we're going to look at that too, and you're going to have to pay spousal and child support on your business income that you leave in the company and your personal income.
Are many women getting alimony anymore? Do they call it alimony still?
They pretty much call it spousal support.
Spousal support.
Yes.
So are women still getting spousal support just because they want to stay home and raise children?
Absolutely, absolutely. If a woman has children and that's the role she plays in the marriage, and the marriage is of any duration, anything sort of past 5 years, well, frankly, even a 1-year marriage with children, the wife would get spousal support.
Okay, and until when? Until the children are grown?
Yeah, pretty much. If she's a stay-at-home mom, she would stay with the children until they're of an age where they're on their own.
Okay.
She might be compelled to work part-time, sort of to reinitiate herself into the workforce. But there's no question that spousal support is more generous and is wider than it's ever been.
Interesting. Male, female, female, male.
That's
best interest of the child. Best interest of the child. I hear that term a lot. We have 30 seconds, but how do you determine that?
The best interest of the child is what's good for that child. What is the best scenario? Where's the best place to live? What's the best programs for the child? It's a child-focused analysis.
Okay, and the child has the clout? Or the parents have the clout? Because if a child's 2, how does a child know? Well,
no, the parents have the decision-making authority, but they can't base it on what they want. They have to base it on what is best for the child.
Okay, well, when these changes are in place, will you come back?
Absolutely, love to.
Nice to see you. I've been reading your blog.
Thank you, thank you.
Law Diva, right?
Yes, Law Diva.
Okay, Georgialee Lang.